share my screen. And while we're waiting for that to appear, I suppose the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is, why would we want to use a chart in the first place? Well, you can think of a chart as really being a visual representation of numeric data. Because it's visual, it means that it's easier to take in information about your data. It can help you to see patterns, relationships, differences and trends. And it also makes it quite a neat way of communicating a message about that data to other people. Now, in this worksheet, let me make this a little bit bigger so that we can properly see what's going on here. And what you will see is I've first of all got this heading where I've got item and amount. Then I've got a few different items, so cola, coffee, pizza, soup and salad. And then I've got amounts for each one of those. If we take just a quick glance at this data, we can tell quite easily that the largest item there is going to be pizza at 489, and the smallest one is going to be cola. But what we can't immediately see is what the proportions are. So things like how much bigger is pizza compared with cola and compared with the overall amount. Now, in order to help us see this sort of information, we can create a chart, and in particular, we can go and create a pie chart. So how do we create the first chart then? Well, what you do first of all is you go and select your data like so. Then you go up to the Insert menu, and from here you've got a couple of different choices. First of all, you can go to where it says Recommended Charts, and if I open that up, you'll see that there are various different types of chart in there that Excel thinks might work pretty well with your data. And if we scroll through, we can see that there are 4 there. And if I wanted to, I could just click one of these charts and it would appear in the worksheet for me. Now, the other way of inserting a chart is again to go to the Insert menu and then go to this little area next to where it says Recommended Charts. And these are really categories of different charts that are available within Excel. Now, for this data, I'm going to insert a pie chart. So I'll open up the pie chart section like so. And I'm going to choose the first chart within that group, which is just a plain old 2D pie. So I select it. And when I do that, we get quite a large chart appearing in the worksheet like so. Now, when you first add a chart to your worksheet, there's probably going to be a few things that you will immediately want to do. Right here, I think what I'm probably going to want to do is just make this a little bit smaller, which I can do by grabbing hold of one of the corners, like that, and just moving that. And then if I want to just drag that around a bit, I can grab hold of the chart, place it where I want it to go, and then release it like so. Now, something else that you might want to do when you first create your chart is perhaps move it to an entirely different worksheet and perhaps create a brand new worksheet for it. Well, if you want to do that, you first of all make sure that your chart is selected. You go up to the Chart Design menu or Design. Then you click on the option that says Move Chart. And when you do that, it will open up a little dialog window that looks like this. And we can see that it's asking you where you want to place that chart. Now, if I want to place it in a brand new worksheet, I can click on New Sheet like that, give it a name, click on OK, and then Excel will go and put that chart onto the new sheet like so. Then if I want to move it back, I again click on Move Chart. This time I put it as Object In, so put it as an object in a particular worksheet. I'll put it back on the basic sheet, so I then click on OK. And there is my great big pie chart like so. So I'll just change the size of that again. Now, the next thing that you will probably want to do when you go ahead and create your chart is you're probably going to want to make some small tweaks to its appearance. And there are a few ways in which we can make these very quick changes. First of all, up in the design menu, you will see that there is this style gallery, and you can either scroll along and see different styles of chart, or depending on your version of Excel, you can expand the entire gallery like so. And from here, we can just choose a style of chart that we think would be good for what we need. Now, a particular sort of chart that I like is this one here called Style 11. The reason why I tend to use this one a lot is you will notice that that adds percentages to the pie chart like so. Now, this is useful because it will tell you what the different proportions are with your data, so you can more clearly see what's going on. For example, we have got our pie chart with various different pie slices in there, and each slice corresponds to one of our items. And if we take a look at this very first slice, the dark blue one, if we take a look at the key down at the bottom, we can see that relates to cola, and we can see from the number that's on there that that takes up 5% of the total amount. If we take a look at our largest slice, so our largest item, that relates to pizza, and we can see that that takes up 44% of the amount. So adding percentages to a pie chart like that is a pretty useful thing to do. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can change your chart's colours. And if I open up the change colours section here, you'll see that there are various different palettes that we can choose. So if we want to have something monochromatic, we have got something like that, or we can choose one of these other palettes if we want to instead. But I think I'll go back to my original colourful one, like so. Now, the other way in which we can make quick changes to the chart's appearance is using this quick layout tool. If I open that up, you can see that that will give you various different types of layout that you can apply to your chart. So you've got different things like you can have your little key at the bottom like that and no chart title. You can have something like this where we have got percentages on the chart and also our key over to the right. So that's another way in which you can just make those quick tweaks to your chart. Now, one thing to say about charts is that they are pretty dynamic. Now, by that, what I mean is if I go to my data, and in particular, if I go to my coffee amount, now at the moment, that is 65. But what I will do is change that to be 565 like that. Now, when I hit return, just watch what happens to the chart. There we go. We can see that when I hit return, the changes take effect on the chart, and we can now see that the coffee value takes up 35% of that total, and that becomes our largest item. And if I take that back to 65, like so, then that will put the data back to how it was originally, like that. Now, something else that we can try doing is seeing what happens if I add in another row of data. Now, the last time I ran a course, someone put in a special request for some cake. So let's put a cake item in here. Let's put in cake like that. Let me put in 200 like so. Let me go and move away from that cell. And if we look at the chart, we can see that actually nothing has changed, has it? It's not added that cake row for us by default. Now, if I go and click on the chart like so, you'll notice that over on the left, it has told us exactly what data that chart is included. And notice how it's not actually including that extra cake row that I added. If you want to add that extra row, what you can do is grab hold of that little corner in that range, drag that down so that it includes cake, and then when you release it, cake will be added to your pie chart like so. So we can see that cake takes up 15% of your total. Now, while this approach works if you are adding new items to your list, it's not ideal, is it? First of all, if you are going to add any new rows of data, you have to remember to go back to your chart and manually add them in. The other thing is that you may have someone who is perhaps not familiar with this coming along, adding data, and then just assuming that the chart will automatically include it when it doesn't. And that's going to be just a little bit misleading, isn't it? So is there an alternative? Well, yes, there is. The alternative is to convert this data into a table instead and then base the chart on that. So let's try this out. Let me first of all go and delete the chart like that. Then I'm going to select all of my data like so, including my headers. I'll then go to Insert. Then I'll choose the table option like that. And when it says, when it asks me for details about this table I want to create, we can see that it's put in the right range for me and recognise that my table has headers. So I can just click on OK, and there's my table. So let's try it this time. Let's see what happens if I go and create a chart based on my table. So I'll go to Insert. I go over to the pie chart section here and open that up. Then I'll choose the 2D pie at the beginning, like so. And let me just change the size of that slightly. The other thing that I will do is choose my trusty style 11 to put my percentages on like that. Now, the first thing to notice, with us creating a chart based on a table, notice that we have got a heading there of amount. So what the chart has done is looked at our data, seen that we've got the heading there of amount, and used it in the chart, which is pretty helpful. The next thing that we can try doing is seeing if the data is just as dynamic as before. So I'll take my coffee amount, I will change it from 65 to 565 like that, and when I hit return, we can see that the chart changes as before, so we can now see that coffee takes up 31% of the total. So I'll just put that back to 65 again, like so. Now, the next thing for us to try out is what happens if we add in a new row. So let me create a new row. Let's say that we would like some samosas this time, so let me put in samosa like so, and let's say that we want 150 there like that. When I then tab away from that cell, we get our chart updating like that. So it has now included that extra samosa slice for us like that. Now, there's something else that can be pretty convenient when you're working with tables and charts in this way. And this is what happens if you filter your table. So let's try this. Let me go to the drop down next to item in the table and open that up. And what I'm going to do is deselect samosa. Now when I do that, just watch what happens to the chart. There we go. We can see that when I deselect samosa, so it's no longer shown in the table, it's also removed from the chart. And if I do the same thing for cake, then that gets removed from the chart as well. So by default, when you create a chart based on a table and filter it, your chart will reflect the results of that filter. So if I put those back, and then we get this. Now, something that I am Sometimes asked at this point is there a way of stopping that behaviour? So can you change your chart so that if we apply a filter to the table, can we still get the chart to show all of the data? And yes, there is. What you do is select your chart like so. Then you go up to Chart Design. Then within that Chart Design menu, there is an option that's called Select Data. So I'll open that up and we get a window that looks something like this. And depending on your version of Excel, you may get the same things appearing but just arranged slightly differently. Now what I'm going to do here is select the option that says Show Data in Hidden Rows and Columns. So I'll check that. I'll click on OK. And then what I'm going to do is try filtering my table again. So I'll open up my little drop down next item. I will deselect samosa and I'll deselect cake. And notice that when I do that, they stay within the chart. So this time the chart isn't being filtered along with the table. What you may notice though is that when I remove items, my chart is getting smaller. But then when I add them back in again, then my chart grows again like that. For now, I just want you to remember that the chart has that sort of behaviour. And as we go through the course, we'll be looking at how we can deal with little issues like that and how to stop that kind of thing from happening. Now, with that, I think I've come to everything to do with creating a very basic chart. So what I'm going to do is just go and stop sharing my screen and we'll go back over to the slides so we can just review what we've learned so far. So, first of all then, why would you want to use a chart in the first place? Well, think of your chart as being a visual way of displaying numeric data. And because it's visual, it means that it can help you to see what's going on, so the patterns, relationships, differences and trends. It also means that your data can become a little bit more easier to take in and just a little bit more understandable. And it also makes it easier to communicate something about the data to other people. How do we create a chart then? Well, first of all, you need to select the data that you want to be shown on the chart. Then you go up to the Insert menu, and from there you choose either a recommended chart or you explicitly choose the type of chart that you want from the different categories. When you've created your chart, you can make quick changes to it. So things like changing the chart's colours, choosing a quick layout, or perhaps selecting a different style from the gallery. Now, one thing that we saw was particularly useful was if you first of all convert your data into a table and then base your chart on that. If you do that, it means that your chart will sometimes be able to use column headers and it will include any new rows that you add to your table as well. The other thing is that if you decide to filter your table, then results of that filter are reflected in the chart by default. And we looked at how you can switch that off as well. So I think before we go any further then, I think it would be a good idea for you to try putting some of that into practice for yourself and creating your very own chart. So we have some data shown there, which you can find in the exercises workbook, which you can download from the resources. What I would like you to do is create a 2D pie chart that's based on that table, and I'd like you to get it to display percentages. What I would like to know from that chart is what percentage of sales are for the Boston store. When you've done that, I'd then like you to filter the table so that it excludes New York, and I'd like to know what percentage of sales are for the Boston store, excluding those New York sales. So try that out. When you've got the answers, please drop them into the group chat so that I can see how you're getting on. I will switch my mic off for, let's say, 3 or 4 minutes to let you get on with that in peace. And then after that time, I'll show you the solution and work through it for you.